Good afternoon, everybody. It's Dee here. Today's date is the 29th of December 2019, nearly at the end of the decade and of the year. Hoping everybody had a very Merry Christmas that wasn't too traumatic. Obviously, last week, before we had our Christmas festivities, we had the eclipse. And that energy is still hanging around and will stay around until the next eclipse, which will happen in January on the 10th, and sort of starts really the build of this Capricorn energy. And if ever there was a January that felt Capricornian, it's this January. It's, you've got a really, really heavy pile of planets in Capricorn. And so already we have got the Sun there, Jupiter, we've got Saturn, we've got Pluto, we've still got the South Node, but not for much longer. That's going to be switching over fairly soon. And today it is joined by Mercury. So Mercury moves into Capricorn today. And to my mind, that can only be a good thing because Mercury obviously ruling our intellectual and capabilities and capacity to understand and to make sense of. It will help start to make sense of some of the things that have already happened, maybe after the eclipse happened on the 22nd, and just to make sense of some of this building energy that we have. I mean, a lot of people are talking about the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that will be coming in January, on the 12th of January. But this energy has been around for a while. There's nothing new in any of this. The only thing that is new, that in addition to this mix, is Jupiter there. And so, to my mind, that brings kind of the positivity out of some of the painful things that happen around this sort of Saturn Pluto stuff. So I think that while Jupiter isn't at its best in Capricorn, I think it does provide some kind of a lift to some of this really heavy duty stuff that's going down. So Mercury moving into Capricorn, you might actually begin to see where the patterns are emerging about what you need to do with all of this stuff. And like I say, it's not anything new. It's not as if this stuff's been, happened yesterday. We've had Saturn in Capricorn since 2017. So it'll be approaching its third year. It's his final stint in Capricorn, and it will dip into Aquarius for a period of time this year before it comes back again to do its final little stint. So it's for those people who've got planets around the 22-degree mark, particularly in cardinals, but also if you've got any sextiles to that. So you're people with other signs in place, so any of the mutables or any of the fixed might still have aspects to, if the like the sextiles, and trines around that. So anybody with a 22-degree mark for any of their personal planets might really hit this year in terms of that Saturn Pluto energy. So that is definitely to be something to be aware of and to start making notes on. And like I said, one of the things about astrology that you can do over time, if you keep a note of when things happen and how you feel about certain things and certain events that might happen in your life, you can start to see the patterns emerge eventually about what things work well for you and what things don't, and then what things are activated during certain transits and certain houses, so that you can then, I mean, you can never fully prepare for them because we can't predict that clearly about how everything's going to pan out, but we can have an idea about the kind of themes that might be occurring, and avoid doing certain things at certain times if we know that there's not going to be positive planetary alignments for us. But for the moment, so what we're looking at and for is where the Capricorn planets are for you, because that will be the theme for you for January for certain and for most of 2020. That so whatever's going on in that house, whatever's been triggered, will be colouring everything else really that happens in 2020. And we've also got to look at it from a world stage point of view as well, because Saturn and Pluto do not meet very often, and when they have met before, it has marked big turning points in our history, and not always for the positive. For example, the beginning of the First World War was Saturn Pluto. Also, when after the Second World War, when people were marking the territories out of where things were going to be, that was also under a Saturn Pluto transit. The height of the Cold War came at a Saturn Pluto transit, and so here we are again. So it is the idea, and I'll go into this more when we talk for the second week of January, when this actually hits. It's going to be about peoples and power and land and marking of territories and changing dynamics, and it's about power that, if it doesn't work for the people that are involved in it or in the actions of that power, then that's when the trouble will begin, or wars could break out, or there's some kind of dissent or revolution or something along those sorts of lines. So on the world stage, there's certainly the potential for large events that we could feel the effects of for many, many years to come. There's also, it is at the end of a 200-year cycle as well, astrologically. So that is another thing to bear in mind. You know, we are moving into new territory, literally. This is the death of the old energies and the old ways of doing things. And, you know, Uranus and Taurus leading the way, and we've got a couple of nice aspects this week involving Uranus that can help show us the way forward. And I think certainly with when Saturn goes into Aquarius, we will start to see that the solidification, if you like, of these Uranian ideas, because Saturn obviously making things concrete and real, and Aquarius being ruled by Saturn, which always seems like a bit of an odd one for people at first, because obviously Saturn is more about things outside the box than in the box. But it can show us where the boundaries are and where we maybe need to push those out a bit further. So that's the way to look at that one, I think. So yeah, make some notes for yourself around this time, you know, because obviously Mercury is all about writing things down, communicating them out, to how you feel, and you'll know yourself the kind of things that will have been triggered over the last week or so, and where the work needs to be done. So, you know, even without looking at your chart and what's happening within your natal chart, you will have a sense of where the activity is, where the bits that you need to work on are, where are the themes going to be for the next 12 months. You know, whether it be thinking about moving job, changing house, relationships, whatever it happens to be for you, there will be something that will be spotlit, and spotlit so brightly that you won't be able to ignore it. And it will not be easy to fix, but like I say, it's not anything that's new. It might hurt a little more in 2020, but like I say, at least we've got Jupiter behind us to help see us through. And even if it is Jupiter's power is diminished in Capricorn, it is still Jupiter after all. So that's the first aspect that I wanted to talk about for this week. And then tomorrow, the 30th, we have got Mercury trine to Uranus, which is one of the Uranian aspects that I was talking about. And this is about being able to find ways of looking forward and making those changes and seeing where the new landscape will be for you, and you know, and those areas that are spotlit through Capricorn, because Uranus points our way to the future. He shakes things up. He isn't always. It can feel more like a lightning jolt or an electricity shock, sometimes coming into our lives. But he certainly stops things from getting staid and boring. And it depends how much you like things to stay the same, but whether you like things to be jolted up a little bit. So it's certainly the 30th would be a good idea to start writing down your resolutions for the year, what you would like to achieve for yourself, um, what ways we can be better in the world. I mean, whether that's making a commitment to using less plastic, to eating less meat, to using the car less, because obviously the Uranus in Taurus is all about the earth and protecting the earth and how we as citizens manage our resources, and look for new ways to behave and to live. So, you know, that could be part of the piece for tomorrow for you to sit and do, is like, how can I make that difference? How can I be part of that? Be part of the solution rather than the problem. So yes, a good day for looking forward, I think. And with Mercury and Uranus being in Earth signs, it is very much about being practical as well. So finding very practical solutions to problems, or to be able to make manifest ideas that you would like for the coming year. Um, so then we move on to New Year's Eve, the 30th of December, and it's obviously every new year has a vibe to it, and this year's vibe is Neptune and Pisces. So uh, as I was saying to my daughter this morning, there's going to be a lot of melancholy drunks around the place come midnight tomorrow, on New Year's Eve. It isn't a New Year's Eve for mad um, jollity or, you know, parties and that kind of thing. It has a much more low-key vibe, and the need maybe to be with people who you care about, because, you know, Pisces can get very deep at times, and say has that sort of tendency to be melancholic, and also to feel a little sort of down about things. And, you know, certainly this last 12 months in the world hasn't, you know, been the best, for a lot of people, and people might find it difficult to look forward, um, and maybe not seeing the future as bright as it could have been. So it's, you know, and also say with it being the end of a decade as well, there's been a lot of people sort of looking back, and, you know, looking back on the last 10 years and where we've come, and you know, what's, you know, what we've achieved. So there could be the kind of feeling of, you know, maybe not achieving what you wanted to achieve, maybe just feeling a little bit down about it, about the whole thing. So yeah, kind of a soggy end really to 2019. But thankfully on the 2nd we have got another nice little Mercury aspect. We've got Mercury conjunct to Jupiter, and so you can, by that time you can dry your tears and say goodbye to the last decade and the last year, and kick off 2020 with some more practical, positive ways of looking at things and what you can do. A lot of people have said as well, you know, after the general election, and, you know, people who were on the red side of the aisle, who felt very sad, and you know, a lot of my friends have felt very down about the whole thing, about another 5 years of the same. And it's looking at ways in which you can be practical and positive to make a difference, even if the wider world might not want to hear, and might not want to help. It is about, well, what can I do? And to me, that this sort of kind of smacks of that, this Mercury conjunct Jupiter, because it's saying a little can still go a long way. And it's about the little deeds and the little ideas, the things that you can do to make a difference in the world. As if resources are small, what do we have? We can give time. That is one thing that we can give, to volunteer, be participate in things, to be able to help in some way, shape or form. It isn't necessarily, excuse me, about donating money or to sort of see things in terms of goods. It's more about well, what can I do myself as a person that could help me feel better about the current situation. And even if you aren't one of those people who, excuse me, who are on that side of the political spectrum, it could be about, well, what things can I do to help myself and my immediate family and friends to be able to be better in the new year. And that could be, say, little things like doing more recycling, using less plastic, making changes to the way that we are and what we value as well in the world. And say Jupiter in Capricorn is certainly about making more for less, and about, say, having value rather than lots of. So it's about, sort of, if you're making decisions about what to do, where to go, it'll be more to do with, well, instead of excuse me, instead of doing like lots of little things or buying lots of little things, is buying one thing that has a value and is going to be a benefit to me for a long time. So moving away from this idea of fast fashion and quick fixes and like, I don't know, eating lots of takeaways and things like that. It's about sort of saying, right, well, what can I make instead? How can I improve my food that I eat, or about my spending habits and what I do there. So that to me is what this Mercury conjunct Jupiter has the feeling of. And the final aspect that I want to go for this week is on the 3rd of January. Mars ends its stint in Scorpio and moves into Sagittarius. Now, I certainly felt the heavy vibe of a Scorpio upon me for quite a long time, which is just these very inward looking. In terms of Mars, for me personally, I've had it on my moon, which hasn't really put me in the best of moods. But that kind of very introspective energy is then being shifted away and outwards to that much lighter, brighter bit of fire. So while, say, the Capricorn rules the skies at the moment, there are little glimmers of hope in there that bring along these different energies, and we have to make the most of those other energies that are around to be able to sort of break up some of the heavy going, sort of the hard working, head down kind of vibe that's going to be around us for most of the year. It's finding those lighter, brighter opportunities. So if you want to make the most of your Mars in Sag time, it could be about getting out and about and exploring, going for walks. It could be having the opportunity to plan for your next adventures, where you'd like to go. It's also the sign of philosophy and wisdom. So thinking along those sort of lines to make sense of some of this, say, heavy duty action that's around. So that's where we're at, really, at the end of this year and the beginning of next. It is going to be very interesting times. It isn't going to be the easiest of years. There is a lot of, say, heavy duty, heavy going, penny pinching, miserly vibe about it all. It's like travelling through mud. It's not going to be a light and bright year. It has its little moments here and there occasionally that say we've got to make the most of. But it's doing more for less, looking at where the big sort of changes need to be in your world, and maybe in some things that you don't really want to see happening, to finally face that you've got to clear those out and make way for the new world to come in, and say Uranus is heralding us forward for that. So enjoy your New Year's Eve celebrations. Let's see if we can make the most of 2020, no matter what it brings us. There are things we can do. There are good things out there in the world. We can still make the best of things, even when, even when the darkest clouds are in the sky. Spread a little happiness as you go by, to quote. So yes, so that's all I would say for now. Enjoy, and I shall see you next week. Okay, thanks very much for listening. Bye bye.